Orpheus and Eurydice. There was once a man and his wife, so much in love that they wanted nothing but each other. Her name was Eurydice, and his name was Orpheus. Orpheus was a musician. Oh, and what a musician! He played the lyre, and sang songs that the grass at his feet curled with pleasure. Snarling wild animals purred and waved their tails. The trees swayed towards him, tilting their leaves like ears. And one day a snake stung Eurydice. She gave a cry of pain and fell to her knees. Orpheus caught her in his arms. "Eurydice, what's the matter?" he cried. But she could not answer. She was dead. Orpheus was left holding her body, but her soul slipped out of his grasp and sank into the dry, cracked ground, down to the underworld. Then Orpheus stopped singing and laid his lyre down. "There is no life without Eurydice," he said. "I must fetch her back." His friends gasped with horror at such an idea, but Orpheus turned his back on them and travelled down through the valleys, pits and tunnels of the world to the shores of the river Styx. At the riverbank, Orpheus called out, "Ferryman, ferryman, come and row me over, for my wife has come to the underworld too early, and I must fetch her back home." There was a splash of oars, and a black boat appeared out of the mist. "Young man, are you mad? No one but the dead may cross this river and enter the underworld. Even if I did row you over, you couldn't get past Cerberus, who guards the gate." "I must," said Orpheus, and the ferryman was so struck by the grief in the young man's face that he let him step aboard. As the boat glided across the river, a dark shape loomed up. Then a terrible barking split the air. It was Cerberus, the three-headed guard dog. Orpheus took out his lyre on his lap and began to play. He played a song without words, and the ferryman stopped splashing his oars to listen. The barking sank to a yap, then to a whimper. When the boat touched shore, Orpheus stepped out of the boat, still playing. Throughout the underworld, the souls of the dead stopped to listen. Pluto, king of the dead, also listened. "What's that noise, wife?" His wife, Persephone, knew at once. It must be Orpheus the musician. "Oh, if he is dead, and his spirit is ours to keep, we shall have better music here than on earth." "Never! Music is forbidden here," exclaimed Pluto. At the sight of Orpheus, a man still wearing his earthly body, Pluto jumped up and pointed his angry finger. "You'll be sorry you dared to sneak down here, young man." Orpheus simply began to sing. He sang of Eurydice's beauty. He sang of their love. He sang of the spiteful snake and the unbearable loneliness. When the song finished, Pluto sank back to his throne. his hands over his face, and tears running down into his beard. Every time someone dies, there are people who want them to live again, said Pluto, but you are the only one who has ever made me allow this to happen. Eurydice shall return to the earth. He clapped his hands, and feet could be heard running down a long corridor. The footsteps of Eurydice. Orpheus peered through the gloom for a first glimpse of her dear face. If, said Pluto, if you climb back to the sunlight without once turning back to look at her face, he laughed unkindly. Back Orpheus went towards the river Styx, and the swish of a woman's robes followed him, but he did not look back. Again Orpheus began to play, and again the great dog Cerberus lolled with delight, and let him pass, licking him with 3 tongues. But Orpheus did not look back. Into the rowing boat he stepped, and someone stepped in behind him. The ferryman rowed the 2 passengers across the river. One last long climb, and they would be free from the underworld. Then Orpheus would be able to take Eurydice in his arms and kiss her and laugh about the dreary kingdom of the dead. Not long now, he called to her. Why did Eurydice not reply? Perhaps Pluto had tricked him. Perhaps it was someone else following him. Or perhaps Eurydice had changed during her time in the underworld and didn't love her husband anymore. Just as the first rays of sunlight came into view, Orpheus glanced quickly over his shoulder, just to be sure. Oh yes, it was Eurydice. Those eyes, that hair, that sweet mouth, calling his name Orpheus. But she sank down like a drowning swimmer. Orpheus, why? She fell back down, and the darkness swallowed her up. Eurydice! But she was gone. Orpheus had lost his beloved a second time. Orpheus was so broken-hearted that he could never again play cheerful music. When he touched his lyre, the notes sobbed out like tears. "Play us something jolly, can't you?" demanded his audiences. But Orpheus played the only music he could. "Something jolly," we said, and when he would not, they attacked him and finally killed him. His soul rushed out of his body, eager to reach the gloomy underworld. "Let me go down to Eurydice," he cried. "Surely I can now that I am dead." But the gods replied, "You shan't go down to the underworld, Orpheus. Your music has given us such pleasure that your lyre shall be turned into stars and hung up in the night sky." "But," began Orpheus, "and you shall live out eternity in that special place reserved for those loved by the gods. And Eurydice shall live with you, there with you." So the 2 spirits floated hand in hand to the field of eternal happiness, to sing and make music together forever.